So here are the take points for installing. Have to get up underneath and pop this fascia out to work along slowly. It's a series of plastic and metal clips. And then when you get to the top, you can pop this off. You have to pop the little retainer up top, coming down. Those two panels, the first one is a blank for nothing. The second one has an M10 screw at the back. On the side, helps to take the sealing strip back, and then you have to work your way down very gently, popping out the retainers. Work your way down, work your way down. On the inside here, there's a little tie down hook. You have to pop that off. There's an M10 in behind that. Nothing behind here of any use to you. Pop the seal strip off all the way down, just working gently. Pull back gently enough. You might pop something a little further in, but you can see back there I've separated the tail light connector. So here's the T connector. Green and red go in on the passenger side. And like I said, we're headed right into that connector. I'm going to pop that one out and join it in, and I'll show you what it looks like as soon as I'm done. Alright, here's the finished assembly. You can see I connected it in. Now I zip tied it there. Now there's a little connector plug on the bottom that looks like it might want to go into the hole that's there in the panel, but I couldn't get it in. So I zip tied it so things don't rattle around in there, make knocking noises while you're driving. Then I've temporarily routed the cable down around the back. I think the other note is just in terms of dress out, I actually came through that panel that supports the speaker so that extra wires aren't rubbing between the panels. So here's the other side. Pull that screw out. Just get that one out of the hole right now. Have to work this back gently. Best to do this with warm plastic, not on a cold day. And now when you look down inside there, you can see that connector. You have to just work your way in. Get a little bit brave, and you'll hear an extra pop to a connector that's a little further back, so we're going to need to make sure we tap everything back together when we're done. You can see I'm going to route the cable up and through the speaker bracket and engage right there. So I'm going to go ahead and squeeze a little tab, take it apart, and route the wires up. Alright, so there's the connector roughed in. Again, I came up through the speaker bracket, ready to plug those together, and we'll see where that leads us. Now along the bottom, I've temporarily routed the passenger side wiring along the bottom here. Pop this panel off at the beginning. I run this across and I just loosely fish the wires in and up through there. And it's going to be tight for wiring, so I'm thinking that this is actually going to be here, right on the inside of this wire. Something like that. I'm going to make sure that you still got room to take your jack out if you need to and the wires don't get in the way. We are tight for wiring, and that's going to make things a little bit more interesting for dress out. You're going to complete the wiring and then move on to running a ground and the power lead. Now while in here I noticed that there are a couple good opportunities for ground. You can see there's one right there. There's a proper chassis ground that's available. There's also that speaker bracket that might be an alternative. So we'll have a look at that in terms of cable length, and you can see, maybe you can't because of the contrast, but you can see the controller is sitting right down in there for the time being. So there's the completed assembly. Now that on this side the wire has a retainer, so I just folded it over for the time being and tucked it into the speaker bracket. And I'll probably put a zip tie on there to keep it from bouncing off that piece of metal. And this side should be good. So here's the ground. The ground comes up with the driver's side. And I have just temporarily positioned it right there. You can see that's the little ring connector. And I'm going to mount it on top of that speaker bracket, secure that down. And there's the finished product. Alright, so where are we at? The wire routed along there. Looks like I've got just enough to be able to slack to be able to tuck underneath that rear applique. Underneath there. Here's the plug wire. Got enough length for it to hang out over the back there. Plenty. Now that routes up along the side and under and into, and I've applied the double-sided tape right there. See it beside the wiper hose. And now I've just got to run the power line from the front. And to start from that, I got to figure out where I'm going to leave the body and head to outside. I'll plug patches, melt holes, and drains and grommets tend to be at the lowest point. So I pulled the tire and had a look, and it looks like we've got a candidate right here. You can have a look and see what that looks like on the bottom. Make sure it doesn't come out in a dead end, and then we'll start planning the routing underneath the car. So, success. It is a bit of a blind hole, but there is an opening on the bottom. There's a secondary panel there that's welded on, where the tow hook, where you may have secured your trailer hitch to, resides. So it's just a matter of fishing through to get to there. I'm going to start from the battery end so I can drop down the firewall and work my way back to here rather than try fishing up the firewall. So we'll end here and start from the battery. So I've got the battery cover off, positive terminals at the front there, and I've got to look at how to route it. Now, in the videos online for a Mazda5, they routed along the brake lines, and I was going to do that. I'm going to try that, but as we get underneath, you'll see that there's some differences involved. So right now I'm going to look at routing it across along the top and back of the firewall, and then once I'm clear and over the exhaust, look at routing it down amongst the AC lines and down and along the side. Gone and jacked up the car and put a jack stand beside it. They're both under loads. They never work underneath just a jacked car. And I've chalked the wheels at the back, so she's not going to roll. Now as we get underneath, you'll see that there's some distinct differences between the 5 and the 3. Namely, underneath the 5, we've got plastic paneling running the entire length of the passenger compartment. And the brake lines actually run underneath it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get a fish wire, or a fish tape, and fish it through and see if I can't just pull the wire right on along the plastic panel. Now the exhaust is on the other side, so I'm going to try and stay away from the heat and hopefully come out down near the end there and look for a good route over the suspension and up into the rear tire well. This is some awkward footage here, but you can see I'm down and I've fished the wire through, and I'm about to come out here near the brake lines. So I came down the firewall, and if you can see, came through and came back. Coming out of here, now I'm going to go into the plastic and follow these brake lines. I'm going to use my fish tape to route the wire all the way along underneath. Starting from back here, I'm going to fish the wire through all the way to the front, hook onto the black wire, and then proceed to pull it back, come on out near the back wheels here. So there's the wire right there. I haven't stress relieved it or anything like that. And then it routes through the pan underneath the bottom. It comes out right here right now. See the fish tape pulled it through. That worked really well. And I'm going to start planning the routing underneath the rear suspension, or over the rear suspension, and out to the back. And just to make sure I didn't have a problem, I tied off the end of the wire up in the engine compartment so that I don't actually fish the whole wire through and run out of cable. I didn't give you much extra, but it looks like there's enough to do the job. Well, it wasn't pretty, but I'm here. Now the routing I chose, I'm not going to show you, because one, it's very difficult to show you, and two, I probably did it wrong. I am probably 12 inches short on the wiring, so I'm going to splice in a short little piece of wire. That's no big deal. One thing I did do, I'll show you, I made a little grommet on the bottom to stress relieve the cable coming through the bottom, because I don't want to chafe and short to the body. So I took a piece of wire loom, worked it through the hole, made sure it was secure, and then zip tied it to the wire so that nothing's going to move as the car goes down the road and it vibrates. I'm going to take some flexible sealant, and I'm going to use that and fill this in the bottom here to prevent any water, fumes, dust and stuff like that from penetrating into the cabin. Alright, so after disconnecting the negative terminal carefully, so as to not to strike the positive terminal, undid this little contact here, fitted on the new piece, already done the splice. I'm just going to dress out the balance of the wiring in the engine compartment here as I get it tightened down and figure out how I want to run it underneath the battery cover, and that'll be the end of the wiring, and then I'll get into testing. Well, through the magic of time-lapse video, we tested it. Got voltage at all the ports, running with all the lights, everything's coordinated, and I'm just going to dress out the balance of the wiring here and start popping panels back on, start putting the car back together. So a little tip with these fasteners, sometimes they can be really hard to put back in because they're spread, and if you push on them they spread more. So what I've done is I've wrapped an elastic around the top. That'll allow me to push on it and put some pressure on it. And then I'll use the edge of my knife blade to work each one of these one by one into the hole until they're all inside, and then you can insert it cleanly. So here's my final routing. Comes out along there, comes to the back. It's just left loose. That runs up into that side. Everything back on. Applique on the top back on. Going to take a second pass the seal, make sure it's properly seated all the way around, and we're just going to finish with this last closure panel. And when it's all done, that's the finished product. Comes up through the gap right in here. Kept it away from the latch, didn't want to pinch it. It's down there, enough play to reach out to the trailer connection, and we're all good. Tested, ready to go.